This is actually going to be one of the most complicated topics in this series about how to start a business installing food forests and pollinator plant gardens. So this is something I'm still working on figuring out, and this is selling the thing and how to actually accept payment. So we did a video on marketing, sales, and then scheduling, but when you sell one of these gardens to people, how do you actually collect that payment? And so we're going to go over a couple of things. First, we're going to start over with what I've covered, and then what I'm going to be moving into as I expand the business. Now, I started this business 4 to 5 months ago. I think this is part like 11. You can see in the title of a series just outlining my whole journey and how to do it yourself. So first of all, I've accepted payments in the most easy, typical ways: Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, cash, and check. Maybe something else in there, but pretty much all the things you would expect for how someone might accept payment for something. And the reason this hasn't been an issue, and the reason that the overall payment acceptance part of this whole thing has been so simple, is because I started off with small projects. Where this becomes an issue or something you really need to think about with everything we're going to be talking about in this video is when you get into bigger projects. And that applies to the sales contract and agreement when there's more money on the line. If the person is able to send that much money at once and have that much money, that just all becomes more of an issue, more of an obstacle, the bigger the project you are doing. So one thing I haven't had to do yet, but that I had available, is Stripe. So Stripe, you get it set up, you can run someone's credit card number. Do a test run with your own credit card with $1 to make sure it's actually working. And then when you have that, you might be in a situation, let's say you're on a sales call, you're meeting with someone. When you're doing this, you want to accept payment right away. If you don't feel like you're manipulating them, which you don't want to be doing anyways, if you feel like you're helping them make a good decision, get the payment right then. Get 50% up front. And the reason you want to do this is because when someone is buying something, if they're like, oh, I'll send the money tomorrow, even if they decide then that they want to buy the thing, then they're just going to spend the next 24 hours thinking about why they shouldn't do the thing. And I learned this really quick. And yeah, if someone really changes their mind, maybe you let them change their mind. That's fine. But the fact is that once they send the money, they're not going to spend the next 24 hours convincing themselves and talking themselves out of it. So that's just a little sales thing you're going to want to have. You want to be able to accept the payment 50% upfront, or however much you want to do right away in this context. So you want to be able to run credit cards. What's another thing that we might get into? As you're doing a bigger project, someone might actually want to finance a food forest, which sounds kind of crazy. But really, this is an investment that's going to improve their property value, that's going to grow food for them. When you actually think about the dumb stuff that people finance, people are out there financing burritos these days. If someone just doesn't have that much cash available, just being able to make a little monthly payment for a bit on a food forest that's going to grow them food and increase their property value, beautify their yard, help the environment, is actually not a crazy thing at all. If you really think about it without the social conditioning that you might be under and that other people might be under, that this is actually like one of the things that makes the most sense to finance compared to cars and even houses. This actually has a lot more value than a house compared to the price. Houses are way too big, way too pricey for the quality. So if you have property, much better to have a cheap house and finance a nice food forest. But that maybe we're getting a little crazy here. So why do you offer financing? Because people don't have, let's say you're doing these bigger projects. You can do a $20,000 project and do a massive food forest for someone. This is going to feed a whole village for generations, right? Like really think about that. That when you do a whole acre food forest, for example, that's going to be more than 20. Let's say you're doing a quarter acre food forest. That's going to feed so many families. When a fully mature quarter acre food forest is producing food, there's so much food there. It's such a beautiful place. Like the value of that compared to $20,000 is absolutely so much more. It's just like an absolute amazing place. And if someone's financing that, they don't need to have the cash. I'm kind of going in circles here, but they don't need to have the cash up front. It doesn't mean that they can't afford it. We don't live in a world where people have a bunch of big savings. People's money is in investments. People are just spending all their money and have cash flow. You don't want to convince someone who's really poor to buy a food forest, because that's the thing. This isn't something where you're like selling someone a get-rich-quick scheme. You're not going to be out here convincing poor people who can't afford a food forest to drop $20K on a loan. That's just not going to happen. And if you don't want that to happen, you don't have to make it. So the key here is that when you're collecting 50% up front, when you are offering financing, you want to focus your inner psychology on not having guilt around these things and negative associations around these things. Obviously, these things could be misused, but they don't need to be. They can be used for good. So that's what I would say. Now, as we move into these bigger projects, you're going to want to have a more clear sales contract. Up until now, all that I've done for my projects is I tell them on text, I tell them on the phone, usually not on text, usually on the phone or in person, what is going to be done. And even when I do it in person, if I just have a good vibe with someone, I'm like, I don't need to write this down. I don't even think I ever wrote it down. So I'm just like, okay, what's that, $1,200? We're going to do this food forest? Okay. And then we just get it done. It's like, is this specific plant here? Is this specific plant there? They're not going to come and be like, oh, that's the value there is like $20 less because you did it this way. At that small scale, you're not going to run into problems. Hopefully. The actual truth of it is that you totally can. And this is really stupid. This is one thing I would do differently, and I would recommend you do differently. It's just that you can get away with it. Have some sort of sales contract, or at least put it in writing what you're going to do with some level of detail. Don't do what I did and just completely freeball it like that. So what does that look like? But first, let's talk about what you want to watch out for with customers. You can have people who are really excited about the food forest. I had a customer who was like literally crying. Like literally just like so happy. Some of these people, when they see the vision of the food forest, and like I'm telling you, when you have a 1/4 acre food forest, and I don't know if that's 20,000, I need to check my spreadsheet. It's somewhere in that area in a factor of 5 times. It's like, yeah, I think it'd be about that. Maybe a bit more, I don't know. But let's say there's like a 1/4 acre food forest. When I actually think about that, if I think about like, let's say it's by a school, let's say it's a place somewhere I'm going to be living and other families are going to be living, obviously, maybe you do have that in just someone's yard, but like when I think about the value of that, that is so huge. When you can get someone in alignment with that vision of how amazing food forests are for them, for the future people, for the property that they're on, for the environment, for healthy food, for all these reasons, and they see the value of a food forest and get aligned with your vision, they're going to be so happy. These customers are going to be thrilled. They're going to tell you, you've made me so excited about my yard. They're going to be so happy, and they're going to think they're getting way much more value than they're paying, which is true because it's true, but also because they see it and they're going to make use of it in that way. Whereas you might have some people who maybe they just wanted something done with their yard and they're like, oh, I guess we'll just do the food forest thing. And some people, it's all about how you frame it. Some people, you just sell it really cheap because you're starting off, which is what I did. Some of them I would be like, wow, this is like, I'm selling it for half of what the market rate is. This is kind of mind-blowing. And they didn't see that. And so they would literally just value it at what it's priced at. And if they weren't in alignment with the vision, then I would have some people where I'm like, wow, this could be bad. Just in the sense that if we don't have it all written down, they could cause me trouble. They could be like, no, I don't want to pay for whatever little reason. So at the very least, have in writing what you're going to do as a text you send them. When you move into these bigger projects, and ideally in general, you need to have a sales contract. Now, what you're supposed to do for a sales contract, and I got this information from a business mentor of mine, is consult with a lawyer, technically speaking. This is something I want to look into. I'm not really sure. I need to find out if a sales contract is something I can do myself, and that would still be a lot better than the other way of doing things. And I don't know. One thing you can do is reach out to other companies that are doing the same thing and ask for their sales contract. If someone is watching this and they want my sales contract, I'm going to have to figure that out at some point over this winter before I move into doing bigger projects and just in general. And I'd be happy to share that. So leave a comment down below. Find my Instagram and send me a message is going to work better. Eternal.harvest on Instagram. And what a sales contract basically is a contract that they sign. They can do a DocuSign, and you just want to lay out, I'm not really sure yet, but what you're going to be doing and what they're going to be doing. Let's say you collect 50% up front. Depending on how you do these projects, that could not even cover the cost of the expenses of the materials. And then let's say you go do all the time, do everything. If you don't get that other 50%, you're screwed. That's not good. You need a sales contract that they agree to send that 50% upon completion of the project, which can mean different things. And that sales contract needs to specifically outline what that means. And you want to write this in your favor. It's very unlikely, in your favor as in like to make it clear that you are going to get paid. Now, so some customers are going to be like, yeah, I really want to read over this sales contract. But some customers, it's like, it's just a formality. I really think you need to focus on, it's so important to focus on getting these ideal customers. And after having this experience with customers that are so in alignment with the vision and so excited, I don't want to work with any other people than people that see the value like that. So we're just going to head over to my computer, see if there's any things we're leaving out. But I think that's pretty much everything for this video. So yeah. Invoices. Okay, yeah, so last thing is invoices. Along with the sales contract, one thing that just happened with me is a customer would ask for an invoice, and I would be like, what's that? What's an invoice? And then I would go ask ChatGPT to write me an invoice, and they'd be like, wow, that looks so professional, thanks. I still don't really know what an invoice is. Like, honestly, I have no freaking idea. It just summarizes, it's like exactly what I sent them. I'd be like, okay, you owe this much, and this much for this, and this is how much it costs. And then an invoice, it's just like laid out with like a different format. It's just like how much they owe you. But I don't get it. But some customers want an invoice. Apparently that's a thing businesses do. So you don't just say, yo, I'm done, give me the other 50, man. You say, oh, here's your invoice, and then that details it. It's just some business nonsense. But yeah, you got to do your invoices. This is something I want to look into more, but I think you could just get AI to do it. Like I said, the value of this series is really that I've just started doing this. This isn't something I did many years ago and I have all down. You can kind of see the process and see the stages. I think the really big valuable part of the series is that someone could find this who wants to start this business, and they could be like, oh, here's where I am now at 0 months. Here's where I could be at 5 months, because I'm at like 4 months right now, whatever, 4 or 5 months. So that's the video. Peace. Stay tuned for the next 10.